For Asgard! Well, WTC is in the books, and we have a new grand champion. That's right. Sweden Asgard takes down the field. A perfect 5-0, although never going 5-0 in an individual round, and none of their members went 5-0. An absolutely true definitional team effort. Wonderful tournament overall. Was only able to watch from afar across the pond here. But congratulations to our top three in the tournament, those being Sweden Asgard, German Zauberling, and then German Erkling taking third place. In fourth place, the mighty South Africans rose up, going 4-1 to round out the top four. Going 4-1 to round out the top four, and my personal favorite with friends on the team, Team USA Manatee in fifth place. In sixth place, we have Belgium making a tremendous showing. Seventh place to Black-Footed Ferrets, other U.S. team, and then Team Canada rounding out the top 8. Great tournament to watch from afar. In terms of just sort of watching it on Longshanks and seeing how it unfolded. A lot of twists and turns all throughout. But in the end, Sweden Asgard taking it all as predicted. As predicted, they were one of my early favorites, as was German Z. German A38, who I had mad respect for, was ended up in 12th place, just behind the French in 11th. Sweden as an entirety did very well. Two top 10 teams, Asgard taking the very top spot, but to round out the top 10 in 10th place, Sweden Midgard. So a lot of good stuff there, and I want to go through a whole bunch of this. First off, we'll go back through Sweden's composition. An amazing run to Olaf Winthrop and his Khador lists, being the best Khador in the tournament with a personal record of 4-1. Absolutely propping up the win rate of Khador at the event. The next best Khador player went 2-3. So that is quite a statement on the ability and thoughtfulness of Olaf and Team Asgard in their execution and utilization of him in the Khador role. Absolute sniper against Signar, Storm Legion, particular. Also had a nice win into the good old Secret Dominion list, and then did have a loss on caster kill to Grimkin in a game in which he was in pretty good position scenario-wise. So really strong Khador list out of Asgard. Really strong team overall. Some real gems, but I think it's a great testament to that team and that team's design that they had two players go 4-1 with their respective factions, and then the other three players were 3-2. So really good players, really solid players all across the board, but really a team effort to take the gold at WTC. So congratulations again to Team Asgard from Sweden. Fantastic job. Now we'll switch gears a little bit, go to the second place team, German Z, which is German Zauberling Zauberlehrling, which I am sure I'm butchering, but I believe it means Wizard's Apprentice. So, sweet name for a team. Want to talk a little bit about their composition again, just to refresh people or to get people to understand what they were bringing to the tournament. They had a Ravens of War list. They had new Signar, so Wolf and Debris, Debaro, Athena. They had uh, Lilith 3 and Lilith in their Ravens of War. So not their traditional Ravens of War, but the Lilith 3 Ravens of War, which did some work this tournament. At least the pairing did on an individual level. Knox went 4-1 with his Legion, 18th overall in the personal standings. So fantastic job um, by German Zauber and Knox with that pairing. So I did want to mention it because it seems that bringing spice this particular WTC was the correct call. Again, as we sort of discussed in Asgard, or we'll go over a little bit more, they brought Legions of the Dawn. Legions of the Dawn fared fairly well for them within the tournament. But back to Germany Zauber, we had the interesting Ravens of War. We had Setcher on their new Khador. We had Secret Dominion. We had a very, very interesting set of lists for Orgoth that we've talked about previously. This is the one that had the three bloodthirsted Mace Claw jackals in the Hurusk list that I thought was an interesting wrinkle, and then a 5th Division list that fared exceedingly well uh, as well, which was great to see. Again, in the individual standings for this 5th Division list by Scatherex is the online name. I'm sure that's probably not the real name. They were a personal 4-1 with 5th Division. So again, Zauberling bringing it. Their particular Signar list in Zauberling also went 5-0. So something to make note of as well. So a really, really well done job by German Z to take second, take the silver, and go undefeated up until they ran into the absolute buzzsaw that was Asgard. So congratulations to them. And then their countrymen, Germany, Erkling, also went 4-1 and managed to eke out third based on the Americans falling to 3-2. So real good showing by Germany. And then again, just to remind everybody what German E or Erkling had, they were running Signar, they were running Storm of the North, they were running Shadows, they were running First Army Signar, and they were running Ravens of War with a more traditional Vale and Lilith 1 pairing. So some interesting bits on the German teams to manage to eke out the win. And then the absolute darling of the tournament, the story of stories, beyond the fact that Germany went extremely hard this tournament, and Sweden also performed exceedingly well as an entire country, with Asgard taking the gold. But newcomers to the tournament, newcomers to the WTC, South Africa, went 4-1 and claimed 4th place, a very well-deserved 4th place, nearly grabbed, uh, nearly grabbed third, but if it weren't for the win total. So if Elkling had not been able to win their games, uh, South Africa would have secured third place, but a very well deserved fourth place, an absolute yeoman's work by this team, phenomenal job across the board by the South African team. They should be very well commended, and excited to see if they're able to make next year's WTC, and hopefully they can bring some more of their countrymen, because this was absolutely awesome to look at from afar, to see South Africa perform and perform well. And they had a very interesting composition. They had Grimkin, they had Dark Operations, so they had Cephalix, they had United Creel, and they had uh, Storm of the North and Ravens of War. So really cool to see um, South Africa coming in and then performing exceedingly well. So congratulations to them. And then I'd be remiss if I don't finish with the top five, being as it's my original pick to win it all, and my countrymen and my a couple of my friends here with Team Manatee. So Team Manatee ended in fifth place on a 3-2 record. Uh, a real strong comeback to get where they were. Um, an incredible strength of schedule. Uh, that that was just a gauntlet, and just proved to be a bit too much for the Americans across the way. So 3-2, but they do boast the uh, best Legion player and the best Orgoth player in the tournament. So not in terms of individual records. So not surprising based on Acres and JVM being there, but really fantastic effort out of Manatee, and a big congratulations to them. Then we get to Belgium, and then in seventh place we have another of our American teams, Black-footed Ferrets. Absolutely stunning tournament on 3-2. Really performed well. Had some incredible matches and incredible matchups, and really excited to see that team coalesce and come together and make it to 3-2 and end up in seventh place. So top eight finish, two top eight finishes for the Americans. Uh, Canada ending in eighth place on a 3-2 record as well. Canada had some very hard fought matches. They had an incredible individual performance by Corey Doyle, the top Cephalix player in the tournament. He went 5-0 personally, and I think I'll just go to his individual standing, because I do like to highlight these. For personal record, Doyle was the ninth best player overall in the tournament on an individual level, on a 5-0. So really strong carry by Corey and the Canadians, 3-2. They were in it right till the end, uh, and just ran out of time, um, losing on clock. So a real heartbreaker for the Canadians, but they should be proud of the top eight finish uh, in the event. So fantastic work. So let's talk about the overall numbers, because this is where it gets fun. So if you are on Longshanks and you are a paying member, you get access to even more statistics than our base available. So I'd highly recommend spending a few bucks to get the advanced membership. Totally worth it in terms of the access to additional statistics that you get, and we'll go over that a bit here. So a couple of things I want to talk about is I want to talk about the top armies in terms of number of players, number of games played, and the then we're going to contrast that with actual play win rates, and talk through it and dive into these win rates a little bit, at least from the very top percentages, which are not going to be the top played in some cases. So a little bit of a spoiler here, but let's go over it. So our most games played at the tournament were by Signar, with 11 players and 55 games played. Second most games played were Shadows of Retribution, 51 games, had 11 players. Orgoth had 45 games played, 9 players. Ravens of War had 44 players. Had 44 games, 9 players. And Dark Operations had 39 games played and 8 players. 35 games were played for Grimkin with 7 players, and 30 games were played for New Khador with 6 players playing them. Again, 30 games for Italian Charter with 6 players playing, and then 30 players playing Infernals with 6 players playing those games. So now let's jump over into win rates. So our top played, for those remembering at home, are Signar, Shadows of Retribution, Orgoth, Ravens of War, Dark Operations, Grimkin, Khador, Italian Charter, and Infernals. Our top win rate: Scorn, Exalted, 80%. They had 2 players playing it with 10 games played, on an 8-2 win record. Second percentage win rate at 71%, 35 games played, Grimkin, 25 wins, 10 losses. Third win rate, 67%, Storm of the North. I did not stutter. Storm of the North. 15 games played, 3 players playing it, 10-5. Fourth place win rate with 51 games played on 67%, a 34-17 overall record, Shadows of Retribution. Right behind them, their countrymen, Legions of Dawn. Legions of Dawn, everybody's favorite punching bag. Legions of Dawn, with 20 games played, 13 wins, 7 losses, 65% win rate at the WTC, and part of the winning Asgard team. In 6th position, Dark Host, 20 games played, 4 players, 12 wins, 8 losses, 60% win rate. Absolute domination of mercenaries, and we'll get into those stats in a moment. 7th place for win rate, Ravens of War, 45 games played, 26-19, 58% win rate. On a 55% win rate, Crucible Guard, 20 games played, 4 players, 11-9. 9th, Infernals, 30 games played, 16-14, 53% win rate. Dark Operations, 40 games played, 21-19, 53% win rate. Remember, Corridoro went 5-0 with this faction in this tournament at 10th place. And then in 11th place, despite being the most played faction in the tournament, 55 games, 28 wins, 27 losses, 51% win rate for Storm Legion. So New Signar was basically a little bit better than a coin flip this tournament. It's basically picking heads. Just behind them, known powerhouse, Army of the Western Reaches from Scorn. 2 players, 5-5, 10 games played, 50%. Same thing for Rulic Guard, 2 players, 5-5, 50%. Also known powerhouse, Menoth, Final Interdiction. 3 players, 15 games played, 7-8, 47% win rate. Italian Charter, 30 games played, 14 and 16, 47% win rate. And finally, with 45 games played, 19 wins, 26 losses, and a 42% win rate, we have your favorite, my favorite, all the Tyrants on the field, uh, Orgoth at 42% win rate with 45 games played. We'll get into what happened there in a minute. But let's talk about Exalted. So Exalted had two players playing them. Obviously, these two players are probably very good Scorn players previous edition wise. But I want to talk about what they accomplished in their games. So they were asked to take on a variety of matchups. They took on both flavors of Circle, Grimkin, New Kador, Rulik Guard, Talion Charter, Orgoth, and Army of the Western Reaches from Scorn, and they beat them all. Their two losses were to Storm Legion and Shadows of Retribution. So the versatility of these two exalted armies, they were able to take on a variety of questions that were posed to them, and they were able to answer all of them, except for arguably the two of the best meta lists, which were the Signar list, the Storm Legion list, and then Shadows of the Retribution, which very few people had answers for. So an absolute phenomenal job by two very good players. I do believe that Exalted should be nerfed into the ground. No, this is a joke. But it does show that Scorn does have some game, and may have some game into a wide reach of the field when constructed and played properly. So I think there's some hope there if you are a member of Best Empire to get your boys on the table and see what you can do. Grimkin. Let's talk about Grimkin. Grimkin with 71% win rate in 35 games. So not just a fluke. Again, WTC does tend to have a higher player quality in general. This WTC, very interesting. I know there's some anecdotes about people grabbing who they could from a meta to make a team work or to get a team together. So we can argue a few things, but we can argue with a 71% win rate. Additionally, we can argue with 74% win rate when they are first player, 69% win rate when they're the second player, meaning it really doesn't matter if they go first or second. Grimkin is just good, and that is borne out here in a variety of dominance that they were able to exert. So they won one or more games against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 armies. Of those 15 different armies that they faced and won at least one game against, only 3 of those opponents won one or more games back. In other words, they had 12 different opponents that they won all of their games against, and 3 additional lists, or three additional armies that they split with on a pure 50-50. They were 50% win rate into Cephalix and 50% win rate into Shadows of Retribution, boasting 4 games in each of those matchups. So 2-2 into Dark Ops and 2-2 into Shadows of Retribution, and they were 1-1 into themselves. So really strong. What's interesting is what sort of preyed on Grimkin, if you can call it that, and these are just individual losses where they did not have a win, but there was only one game played, and that was Crucible Guard, uh, Black Fleet, and Black Fleet, Rulik Guard, Orgoth, and Scorn Exalted. They they absolutely owned the Legion matchup. 3 games, all wins. Absolutely owned the Signar matchup with Storm Legion. 5 games, all wins. Also, New Khador, 2 games, both of them wins, including against Olaf. So just phenomenal job, phenomenal dominance out of Grimkin. So some things to consider there. Storm of the North. Let's talk Storm of the North, the darling of the tournament in many ways. 3 players, again, 10 wins, 5 losses, 67% win rate. Let's go a little bit deeper. Trolls also, Storm of the North does not really care if you go first or second. It's got a 71% win rate when going first, 63% win rate when going second. 7 games going first, 8 games going second. Their most games played were into Orgoth, and they boasted a 50% win rate, 2-2. In terms of pickups, they had a win against Storm Legion. They had a win against Khador. They had a win against Ravens. They had a win against Rulik Guard. Win against Final Interdiction. 2 wins against First Army, and 1 win into Convergence. They had a loss into Secret Dominion, a loss into Dark Operation with 1 game played, and a loss into Legion of Dawn. So real strong work here overall into a variety of armies. Most of the new armies that were prevalent, they were able to fare pretty well against overall, and then were able to take out First Army pretty effectively. So great job there on the troll side with the Storm of the North. Let's talk Shadows of Retribution. Second most played list in the tournament, 51 games, 34 wins, 17 losses, 67% win rate. Let's get into it. So what are these wins against? What are the losses at? Does this list care if it goes first or not? It does not. 67% win rate, 70% win rate when going first, 63% win rate when going second, 27 games where they got the die, 24 games where they went second. So let's get into the matches that made the win rate. So most played into Orgoth, 6 games. I can tell you straight from testing that this was a matchup that the American teams were actively trying to avoid because Orgoth does not play well into Shadows of Retribution, and this is borne out in the actual games and win rate played. So they were able to finagle that 6 times across all those 51 games played, and not a single win for Orgoth. Second most games played, or tied at 6 games played into Shadows, was Dark Operations. Dark Operations absolutely ate Shadows of Retribution's lunch. 17% win rate for Shadows. in this match. Dark Operations absolutely dominates it. Additionally, 5 games into Ravens. Ravens wins this match 60% of the time. So Storm Shadows of Retribution only wins this 40% of the time. And again, into Grimkin, 50% win rate. 4 games, 2-2. So then they had Shadows had 3 games into New Signar, won 2 of them, so 2-1, 67% win rate. 3 games into New Kador, absolute dominance by Shadows, 99% win rate. 3 games into Infernals, 99% win rate, absolute dominance, 3-0 for Shadows. 2 games into First Army, Shadows, absolute dominance, won both of them. 3 games into Crucible Guard, Shadows absolutely ate Crucible Guard's lunch, 3-0. Same thing with Secret Dominion. 3-0. So just a lot of attempts at answers by the community, and really there were 2. There's 2 answers for Shadows, and those answers were Dark Operations, and they were Ravens of War. That was what you could play, and safely navigate this matchup most of the time. But this was an absolute monster, this tournament. Second most games played, first amongst wins in terms of wins by in terms of overall wins. So this was absolutely the list of this WTC. This was what you should have been on. This is what you should have been playing generally, and this was what the matchup math was about. Because if you had an answer to this, it was likely going to be a win for your team. If you did not have an answer for this, it was a win to the teams that brought Shadows. So it there was a lot of different flavors that we saw. All of those flavors performed very well. All of those flavors performed very well. Shadows was an absolute beast. Let's talk about its kid sister, Legions of Dawn. 20 games played, 13 wins, 7 losses. Legions of Dawn also is one of the first lists that we're going to see on here, or list pairings that wants to go second. 67 or 65% win rate, 20 games played, 12 games going first, only a 58% win rate. On the 8 games when it went second, 75% win rate. So take from that what you will. Small sample size, but take from that what you will. That there's that large of a disparity between almost 20 basis points between winning the role and going first and going second, where going second is so much higher for this particular list. It went into a variety of lists. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It faced 11 different armies that it got at least 1 win against. 8 of those it won all of its matches against, and 3 of those it lost 1 match each against, for 50% win rates. It had no more than 2 games into any particular race. It went 2-0 into Orgoth. It was 2-0 into Talion Charter, 2-0 into Dark Host. Or sorry, 1-1 into Dark Host, 1-1 into New Signar, 1-1 into Infernals, what did it lose to? It lost to Shadows of Retribution, one game. It lost to Ravens of War, one game. Lost to Grimkin, one game, and lost to First Army, one game. Also had losses to Infernals, one loss to New Signar, and one loss to Dark Host. So interesting, bit of a tournament here for Legions of Dawn. It was fifth best in win rate. It did have only 4 players though, but those 4 players did very well for themselves on the aggregate. Dark Host. I know in pre-talk leading up to it, we were cautiously optimistic. We were cautious about the number of cricks that were going to be at the tournament. There was some thought that there was going to be none. I was not in that boat. I thought we were going to see some. We did. We ended up seeing 4 players, and those 4 players went 12-8, 60% win rate. So far more wins than players, which was great to see. We have a very nice positive win rate. 6th place, good enough for 6th place from an army standpoint. So let's dig into what Dark Host did well. Dark Host absolutely crushed all flavors of mercenaries. It had 6 games across the 4 flavors of mercenaries that were present at the tournament. And it won every single one of those games. It also won its one game into Infernals. It's won its one game into Orgoth. It won into Temple Guard. It won one game into Crucible Guard and lost one game. Went 1-1 into Legions of Dawn. Went 1-1 into tournament darling Shadows of Retribution. What did it lose to Purely? Purely lost to Circle one game. Purely lost to Storm Knights one game. Lost to New Signar one game. Lost to Grimkin one game. And lost to Ravens of War one game. So, yeah, Crix did well, exceedingly well into the mercenary armies. They kind of play into what Crix wants to do. So makes a ton of sense that would be a loss there across the board. But it did do fairly well into gave you at least a 50% shot at Shadows of Retribution. So it was a bit of an answer for teams, at least to where you could get that match to a coin flip, and that's better than most people could do. So really interesting bits there. So let's jump back over to our 7th place, Ravens of War. 45 games played, 26 wins. 26 wins is good enough for 3rd on overall wins in this tournament. So Ravens of War was the 3rd most winning list. Not by percentage, but in terms of total wins, because it has more players playing it, obviously. With 9 players playing it, 45 games played, 26 wins, 19 losses, 58% win rate. Let's get into it. Legion, 58% win rate, 67% win rate when it goes first, 53% win rate when it goes second. So about a 10% difference between going first and second. Legion definitely likes being on the button and playing in. So what does Legion do well? Well, Legion did exceedingly well into a variety of lists and matchups. First off, they dominated Circle. They got to play 3 games against the 2 flavors of Circle total. They won all of them. One into Dark Host, 2 games into Dusk. Won both games. 2 games into Armored Core. Won both games. 2 games into Italian Charter. Won both games. 1 game into Legion of Dawn. Won that game. 1 game into United Krills. A 75% win rate into Dark Operations, so 3-1, into Cephalix, a 67% win rate into Roulette Guard, 3 games played, went 2-1, a 60% win rate into Tournament Darling, Shadows of Retribution. If you could get this matchup, it was very dominant in terms of Ravens of War, and one of the better win rates across the board in the tournament, into Shadows. It went 50-50 into the 2 games that it had, an Infernals 2-2, or sorry, 1-1 into New Khador. Of course, 4 games into Ravens of War itself. That was a 2-2. 50% into Final Interdiction, Menoff, 1-1. Got absolutely torn up by New Signar. Only 4 chances, only won one of those games, 1-3 into New Signar. So New Signar just too much for Ravens of War. Speaking of too much, Grimkin absolutely ripping apart Ravens of War. 5th Division had 1 win into Ravens of War. Orgoth was not able to scrounge up a win into Ravens of War, and on 2 games. And Storm of the North, Orgoth won both games into Ravens of War. So Ravens of War was unable to win into it. Same thing with 5th Division, and same thing with Storm of the North. Storm of the North, too much for Ravens of War. But Legion was a good place to be this particular tournament. So some food for thought there. Crucible Guard, 50% win rate. We'll jump over and look at the statistics and see if we got anything fun there. It had about the same win rate, 55 and 56, whether you went first or second on roughly identical games played. It got the bulk of its wins into got 1 win into Grimkin, got 3 wins into 5th Division, 1 win into into Convergence, 1 win into Final Interdiction, 50% win rate into New Khador, 50% win rate into Italian Charter, 50% win rate into Dark Host. Signar ate its lunch a little bit. It only won 1 game out of the 3 into Signar, so 1 and 2 into Storm Legion. Lost all of its games into Infernals, which was 1, and then lost its three bats that it had into Shadows of Retribution. So definitely not what you want to be taking into Shadows of Retribution, at least this tournament weekend. Did exceedingly well, however, in bunkers. So if it could get on bunkers, it had a 75% win rate in the tournament. So had 4 attempts at it, won 3 of those games. So a little something to think about there. We'll talk a little bit about Infernals. Infernals were 30 games played, 16 and 14. They're kind of all over the map in terms of game wins. Notables, had 2 games into Orgoth, won both of those games. Had a 67% win rate into Dark Operations, so had 3 chances at Cephalix, got 2 of those wins. 1 loss. Same thing with Italian Charter, 2 wins, 1 loss. It was 50-50 into Legion, 1-1. 50-50 into Legions of Dawn. And then had 3 games into Shadows of Retribution, lost all of those. Had 2 games into Grimkin, lost all of those. 1 game into Storm Legion, lost those. 1 game into First Army, lost that. 1 game into Dark Host, lost that. And 1 game into not Storm Division. 1 game into Secret Dominion, and lost that. So good tournament overall for Infernals. But let's talk Dark Operations. 40 games played, 21 wins, which is good enough for 1, 3, 4, which is good enough for fourth place on the total wins tracker. Two games played, 40 games played, 21 wins, 53% win rate. Cephalix has a very telling story when it comes to rolling for first. If it goes first, it wins 67% of the time. 21 games tell us that. 37% of the time win rate if it goes second. We've got 19 games to back that up out of the 40. So if you're going second with Cephalix, you are in trouble. You are behind the 8 ball to start in a significant manner. If you're going first, you have a much clearer road to victory. So that is very interesting. As we stated before, but I'll state it again, they absolutely munched Shadows of Retribution. 6 games played, 83% win rate. So I believe that's 5 out of 6 games. They totally crushed Shadows of Retribution. This was the list that you needed to take on Shadows in a meaningful way. It also beat up Old Signar, or First Army. It had 1 game into that. Had two wins into Storm Legion. Had a win into Dusk. Went into Armor Core. Went into New Kaedor. 1 win into Storm of the North. Was 50-50 into Convergence, 50-50 into Grimkin with 4 games played, 50-50 into itself with 4 games played, 50-50 into Talion Charter with 2 games played, so 1-1, 50-50 into Orgoth with 2 games played, 1-1. Only had 1 win into Infernals out of 3 attempts, so 1-3. Only 1 win into Ravens of War, 1-3. And then lost out completely to Dark Host. 2 games, Dark Host owned it. 1 game loss into Secret Dominion, 1 game lost into 5th Division, 1 game lost into Legion of Dawn, and 1 game lost into Hero of the Tournament, Army of the Western Reaches. Where you wanted to be dark operations. You wanted to be on bunkers. You wanted to be on invasion. Invasion, you absolutely dominated. You had 8 games played on invasion, 75% win rate. You had a 50% win rate on split decision and a 50% win rate on bunkers. You absolutely sucked on King of the Hill, 30% win rate there. And then spread the net, also only a 38% win rate. So not playing into the strengths of the Dark Operations list. And then in terms of breakdown of those kills, 63% caster kill rate for win. Death clock 50% of the time. And then scenario win 48% of the time. I'm sorry. You had 8 games that were decided by caster kill, 8 games that were won by death clock, and 23 of those games were decided by scenario. If it came down to caster kill, you got that 63% of the time. Death clock, you were 50-50. And 48% of the time you won on scenario as part of that 53% win rate overall. All right, so that's Dark Operation. Let's talk about Legion of Storm, the Storm Legion, new Signar. 55 games played, most games played at the tournament, most taken army, most played army because of one unfortunate replacement that one of the Swedish teams had to trade out their Shadows of Retribution player Unfortunately, had a positive COVID test prior to arriving at the event, so he was unable to travel. And then they were able to get a replacement player in who ended up playing Magnus. So that's one of the reasons the numbers are a little different on Shadows than were originally registered, which is why we see 51 games or 50 games played, or 51 games played for Shadows of Retribution, and 55 games played for Storm Legion, despite both having stated 11 players. So there were 28 wins, 27 losses for a 51% win rate. Let's get into the numbers here behind the scenes on Storm Legion. So Storm Legion had a 51% win rate, 55 games. 25 of those games it went first. It had a 48% win rate. And 30 of those games it went second and had a 53% win rate. So probably not enough to be statistically significant, but it's something to look at when we're talking about how, why, and where these wins came about. So Signar played into nearly everything, um, and played into a lot of things well. Let's talk about what it did the best. What it did the best was take out Ravens of War. 75% win rate on 4 games played. Also had that same win rate and games played rate into Italian Charter. So 3 wins, 1 loss, 3 wins, 1 loss for Storm Legion into Ravens of War and Italian Charter. Single games into Storm Division. I'm sorry, into Storm Knights, First Army, Dusk, Infernals, Armored Core, Exalted, uh, Dark Host, Black Legion, and Secret Dominion. All of those wins, but only 1 game. Where it gets interesting is in the midpoints. So it had 3 games at a Crucible Guard. It won 2 out of those 3, 67% win rate. It had 4 games into COC, 50% win rate. Went 2 and 2. 2 games into itself, went 1 and 1. 50% win rate into Orgoth. 6 games played, 50% win rate, so 3 and 3. Went 1 and 1 into Legion of Dawn. 5 games played into Khador. Won 2 of them, 40% win rate. So 2 out of 3 into New Khador. So New Khador's got a bit of an edge into Storm Legion, at least for this tournament. I know a lot of those wins came at the hand of Olaf, who is also the true Saiyan of Khador. So and the Team Asgard. So some high quality opponents, high quality Signar players went down to Olaf this tournament. 33% win rate uh, into Devourer's Host. So 1 and 2, or sorry, 1 and 2 into Devourer's Host. 1 and 2 into Shadows of Retribution. 5 games into Grimkin, lost all 5 of those games. You cannot drop new Signar Storm Legion into Grimkin this tournament. You got. 1 loss into Storm Division, or sorry, not Storm. 1 loss into 5th Division. 2 losses into Dark Operations. Cephalix proved to be too much for New Khador. So did both flavors of Trolls. 1 game each was the result there. So Storm of the North with 1 game played and a loss for Signar, and Signar losing also to United Krills. So interesting bits overall on Signar. It was good to be Khador into Signar. You were coin flip and Orgoth, which has definitely been my experience playing into that faction because you get Wolf. It's Wolf versus Harusk, and that's basically a coin flip, and that proved out to be what you saw across the 6 games that were played. Grimkin absolutely ate Storm Legion's lunch. Storm Legion avoided, for the most part, Shadows, and when it didn't, it was only able to win one game. Devourer's Host was very good into Signar. So 33% win rate for Signar into Devourer's Host on 3 games played. So Devourer's Host was definitely a potential answer into Signar, and this number would definitely be higher. I think the win rate would be about the same, but the number of games lost would be higher if we had more Devourer's Host players. Because it was definitely a bit of an answer for Signar. But Grimkin, absolute dominance into Signar, which we talked about a bit before. So I want to talk next. We're going to jump a few places down to the 16th best faction or army in terms of winning percentage, but the 1, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4. The 6th best total wins on 19 wins, 26 losses, 45 games played, 42% win rate. Orgoth Sea Raiders. Orgoth had a very interesting showing this tournament. Some of the numbers are going to illustrate something really funny here. So 45 games played, 42% win rate. On the 18 games we got to go first, 67% win rate. On the 27 games we went second, 26% win rate. So the die roll proving to be very important for the majority of Orgoth lists that were present at this tournament. Let's get into the numbers. What went well? 2-0 into Devourer's Host, 2-0 into Convergence, 2-0 into 5th Division, 2-0 into Ravens. A win into Grimkin, only got one Grimkin drop. A win into Army of the Western Reaches, a win into Dusk. Let's talk 50-50s. We had 6 games into Signar. We won 3 of them, 50-50 split. We had 2 games into Cephalix, Dark Operations, went 1-1. We had 4 games into Storm of the North, went 2-2. Let's talk about what did not go so well. We had 6 games into Shadows of Retribution. We lost all of them. That was our most played game outside of Signar. Signar, we 50-50'd. If we were put into Shadows of Retribution, we absolutely got trounced. This was something that the American team saw in testing and tried to actively avoid, is that Shadows really does everything that is not good for Orgoth to play into. We can attrition it pretty well, and even if we attrition it the best, it can position in such a way that we are blocked out of scenario. And it just wasn't a nut that the American testing could crack for Orgoth. So definitely not surprised by Shadows owning the matchup. Am a little surprised by the number of teams that engineered the Orgoth match or allowed for the Orgoth match to happen with the 6 games played into it. So that's interesting. Also interesting was Menoff final interdiction. Won 3 games against Orgoth. So Orgoth had 4 games into final interdiction. It won 1 of them. It lost 3 to final interdiction. Menoff. I can tell a lot of that was the nature of a majority of Orgoth lists were not as range-centric as some of the other ones. And the range-centric list would fare far better into the men-off matchup generally. The the less range-centric lists that were a little more prevalent in the Orgoth body as a whole, definitely we're going to fare worse into Final Interdiction. Um, so again, that makes sense to me. 2 games played into Legion of Dawn, 2 wins for Legion of Dawn. Orgoth unable to crack that code. 2 games into First Army, Orgoth unable to crack the code. 2 games into Infernals, also a match that we kind of saw in testing was not overly favorable to Orgoth, so not really surprised there. 1 loss into Dark Host, with 1 game played. A little bit of surprise there. Generally, Orgoth has a lot of tools into Dark Host that tends to be a little more of a green match. Dark Host can um, in the straight Scaverius mass can be pretty scary into Orgoth, but there's some mitigation that can be done. It's a playable game, but again, just 1 game there. Uh, Storm of the North doing very well into Orgoth was interesting. That's not what I would call overly surprising, but it was interesting to see it play out. Secret Dominion uh, winning 2 of the 3 games. Again, not overly surprising. It's not the game that Orgoth wants to play, for certain. uh, but what it seems that Orgoth did quite a bit this tournament was playing to Signar and flip coins, and came out right about 50%. So interesting bits there. I think some of the list construction, as I'd commented before, definitely bore out. The best Orgoth player was American Manatee. It was Acres, 4-1. Um, Followed closely by German Z's Gorik at 3-2, and fellow American on Team Black-Footed Ferrets, who also went 3-2, which I believe was Chris. Um, they played very well across the tournament. They had lists that I rated pretty highly, and then there was a large logjam of players at 2 and 3 for Orgoth. So propped up a bit um, by a couple of players who did pretty well with the army across the long haul, and then suffered a little bit by some of the list construction that I had pointed out earlier. So I hate to be wrong about that. Hate to be right about that. Um, but I think that helps explain why we had so many Orgoth in the tournament, and then had the result that we had. Um, the other part of it was we had far too many matches into Shadows. You take out those Shadows matches, I mean that's 5 losses that we could have potentially 50-50'd on something else, um, from a general standpoint, or 1. I mean that moves us up. Even 2 wins, I mean that puts us on par with the 21 wins of Dark Operations on 5 more games played. So there's some things to be said there, but that's sort of where my headspace is at on it as I reflect through, for Shadow, for Sea Raiders. I'll go 1 more on this, which is Talion Charter. It was 15th best win percentage, tied at 47%. 12 through 13 was again Army that reaches Rulic Guard and Final Interdiction. But again, there you're looking at 2 players, 2 players, and 3 players. So the numbers are a little skewy. Once we get into just 3 players, there's not a ton can be drawn there, except hey, they had 3 players that knew their armies and played well for the most part. But when we start getting into 30 games played, that starts to be slightly significant for the tournament. And it was one. It was a medalist that a lot of people went to, was Italian Charter in some form, and it went 14 and 16 across the seas for a 47% win rate. Let's get into it and dive into it a bit. 47% win rate. However, it had a 67% win rate when it went first, but it only went first 9 games. 21 games it went second, and had a 38% win rate. So I think if you average this out, if it had 15 and 15, you see a significantly higher win rate for Italian Charter. It just didn't go first enough on the day. So let's get into the games and the numbers. Um, where it did well on sort of an individual basis. It picked up a single win against Secret Dominion, against Convergence, against First Army, 5th Division, a win against Orgoth, a win against Temple Guardians, a single win into Shadows of Retribution, but it only got one crack at it. A single win into Army of the Western Reaches. Um, it went 50-50 into Crucible Guard, into New Khador, into Dark Operations for Cephalix. It went 50-50 against itself, obviously. Where it started to go wrong, 3 games into Infernals, it went 1 and 2 into Infernals. So you can't really drop this into Infernals if you want to. Only a 33% win rate there. Even worse, on 4 games played, had 1 win into New Signar. So 1 and 3 into New Signar, not the place you want to be. There had 2 losses into Dark Host, 2 losses into Ravens of War. Again, not surprising. 2 losses into Legion of Dawn, and then a single loss into Exalted. So some to me, the interesting bits here, uh, as we kind of talked about, is how few games it went first and how much the win rate varied based on that first die roll. Also interesting is the number of times that this went into New Signar, 4 times, only had 1 win, and the fact that it did have a singular win into Shadows, and Shadows looks like actively worked not to get this matchup. So it's interesting that it was able to, or most of the teams that had a Shadows player were able to avoid the Italian Charter player, uh, which is interesting to me. They had 9 games decided by caster kill, 9 games by death clock, and 14 games by scenario. Went 50-50 in death clock games, 50-50 on the scenario game, and only had a 44% win rate on games that were decided by caster kill. Where you wanted to be from a scenario standpoint, you wanted to be on Invasion. Had 3 games played on Invasion, 67% win rate. Was 50-50 on bunkers, 40% on split decision, 25% win rate on King of the Hill, and had a 33% win rate on Spread the Net. Again, not surprising there. 27 games played total, 48% win rate when adjusted. So very, very interesting numbers here, and let's talk it. We're going to talk one more, which is Winter Core, and this is because we had 30 games played on Winter Core. Winter Core with the 23rd best win rate, or 30%. They had 9 wins, 21 losses. 4 of those wins came courtesy of Olaf and Team Asgard. So what did Khador do well? Khador was really, really good into Signar. It had 5 games into Storm Legion, and it won 4 of those games. Had a 60% win rate on those 4 games. It had 1 win into Storm Knights and 1 game into Storm Knights, 1 win into Secret Devourers or Secret Dominion. It was 50-50 in the 2 games it played into Crucible Guard, 50-50 into 5th Division, 50-50 into Legion, 50-50 into Italian Charter. Where it did not do so well, it had 3 games into Shadows of Retribution, lost all of those games. It had 2 games into Grimkin, lost both of those games. It had losses to Devourer's Host, lost to House Callus, loss to Infernals, lost to Dark Operations, lost to Final Interdiction, lost to Legions of Dawn, lost to Army of the Western Reaches, lost to Exalted, lost to Storm of the North, and lost to United Krills. Cater was again on a 30% win rate. It had perfect balance in terms of number of times it went first and number of times it went second, 15 and 15. In terms of its game played, 27% win rate when going first, 33% win rate when going second. So how did it get its games decided? 18 games were decided by caster kill. Khador was 33% in those games. Khador caster security is an issue. You have to have a way to keep your caster secure. If you're able to do that, you deny this win condition to your opponent. On Death Clock, there were 2 games it was 50-50. On Scenario, 10 games were decided by Scenario. A 20% win rate for Khador on Scenario. So the best thing for Khador to do was to, at least percentagely, was to get to Death Clock and pray. Was to just try to time you out. What actually happened is most of the time the game was decided by caster kill. Either Khador killing the caster about 33% of those games, or they killed your caster. And I do know that most of Olaf's games were decided by caster kill. Typically a Tempest knockdown initiated by ECAT, and then followed by a Gallows. So very interesting stuff here. And then in terms of Scenario, pretty much Scenario exhausted. The only one that Khador really didn't like was, it didn't like any of them, but the one that it did the worst on was Invasion with a 17% win rate. On Bunkers, it was 33%. King of the Hill, 33%. Split Decision, 33%. Spread the Net, 33%. 30 games played, and again, a 30% win rate. So new Khador is in an interesting spot. Winter Core is in a bizarre spot. The best thing we can do is try to kill your caster, but at the same time, if our assassination runs fail, or we try to set it up and we don't have caster security, there's a real good shot that the game's going to end with you just killing our caster. So it's a weird spot for the faction to be in. Olaf did amazing with this list. I recommend for all Khador players to kind of check it out, see what he did. He's got a little bit of a quick write-up now in the Warmachine and Hordes Discord. So probably can pry some more information out of him later when he's a little more rested. But was great talking with him today about where his lists were at, and his strong utilization of Tempest. So a lot of Tempest play from him with Ekaterina. So very, very interesting stuff. But that's the big guys played at the tournament. That is the major breakdown of WTC. Awesome job by the organizers. Hats off to all that participated, and exceedingly warm congratulations to Team Asgard from Sweden, Team Zauber from Germany, Team Erlunk from Germany as well, coming in 1, 2, and 3 respectively. So truly a great day for Warmachine. 120 players across 24 teams at this event. Was really amazing to see. Next WTC will be in Dusseldorf. It will be in August, and it will be specific to Warmachine. Have a venue capable of supporting 32 teams, and I hope that there are 32 teams in a waiting list for next year. So I hope we continue to see the growth in all the communities internationally. I think we had a rough year this year, and I think we're finally on the mend. Um, and hopefully that we just build on strength over strength, and we see this great game continue to grow and to revitalize in areas that were dormant. But again, thank you all for listening. I am Tyrants on the Field, and I'll be back with more stuff.